Hello and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Tea Time SEO. I'm SEO Joe Blogs, and I'm joined by Carrie Shepherd here. We're both from Authoritas, and today we've got a great session lined up for you. We have the topic competitive analysis, how to get ahead in the SERPs, and we're joined by Andrew, Francesco, and Shane. But first, does anyone have a cup of tea ready or coffee? Very good. We have actually got an international tea time today. We've got Shane in California, Carrie in Putney, myself in Barcelona, Francesco in Chester, I believe it was Chester, and Andy in Birmingham. So great to see Tea Time SEO go international. And the initiative behind it really was to connect everyone, especially now that we're working from home, and also to learn something new. Plus, of course, encouraging everyone to take your tea break, or just a break and stretch your legs. So I wanted to say that, as well as Authoritas putting on Tea Time SEO, we're also a software platform, and we help clients to generate that traffic that converts. So we have a new feature that's come out called Visibility Explorer. You can view your competitors, you can identify the different SERPs for different terms, and you can also download up to these 500,000 keywords for free. So give it a go. Just go to authoritas.com and try it out. If you have any questions, you can contact myself, Carrie. Lawrence is also joining us in the chat, and Raphael. So if you've enjoyed this Tea Time SEO series, subscribe to our YouTube channel. And particularly if you're enjoying this session, I would love you to like our video. So I'm going to pass over to our speakers who are going to introduce themselves. Over to you, Andy.
Hiya, yeah, thanks Joe. Yeah, so my name's Andy, and I got into the SEO industry, I think, somewhat spuriously, like most people. I started a company when I left uni, selling roller shutters, which is not something I know anything about or really care about, but I thought everyone's website wasn't very good, and I thought if I made a better one and tried to rank it, I'd make some money. So I grew this startup company to nothing to 2.5 million within 3 years, just using SEO and a computer. So I learned firsthand the power of SEO, and from there I wanted to get more experience working with larger companies. So I sold my part of the company and joined a large agency in Shrewsbury. Well, they've got London's globally actually, and from there we worked on massive corporate clients like Amazon. We worked on Netflix, Canyon Bikes, Victoria's Secret, and from there I worked there for nearly 2 years, or 1.5 years, and then I recently left within the last year and gone freelance into consulting. So I've worked for startups and consulted for big blue chip companies as well. And then I could guess a fun fact is I've lived all around the world. I've been very lucky. It was my dad's job, so I've lived from California myself to Italy to Scotland, and now I've resided in Birmingham, unfortunately, if you want to look at it that way. So that's a bit about me.
Thank you very much, Andy.
Hello, my name is Francesco. I'm an SEO consultant. Have been in digital marketing for a few years since I started to learn HTML in the late 90s with a lot of tables, working website and developing a small website with plenty of tables. I'm Italian, as you can hear my accent, but living in Chester, UK. I've been living in Ireland for several years, Canada as well, and so on. I'm brand new dad, so if you can hear some noise in the next few minutes, you know the reason.
Well, many congratulations on being a dad. I'm sure, well, I've been told it's very rewarding to be a parent.
So, cool. So, hey guys, so my name is Shane Barker. I'm been in the digital space for about 25 years. Well, at least marketing digital space within the last, when it became digital, I guess, online. International speaker, spoke all over the world about, SEO, content marketing, influencer marketing. Also, I'm the host of the Marketing Growth Podcast. I also teach at UCLA, teach a personal branding, how to be an influencer course, and I reside in Sacramento, California.
Great, thank you very much. And a big thank you to our speakers for giving up their time. As I said, it's all an international tea time SEO. We have Shane coming in quite early from California, Francesco and Andy from the UK, Chari as well, and myself from Barcelona. So thank you everyone who has joined us today, including those that are not signed in. I'm going to pass over to those, to our speakers, and please leave your name, please leave your questions in the chat, and we will be able to answer those at the end. Over to you.
Cool. Andy's tips. So I guess the first one I wanted, and it's probably been droned in and you've seen it many times before, but I wanted to show evidence of it. Write content, sure, but write fewer pieces of higher quality content. So what you're seeing here is an example of it's a recent, I say starter company. They've been going for a year and a half, and they had a lot of blogs and they paid for a lot of content to be written. When I took over his account back in December of this year, we basically, and I've seen one of the other speakers has talking about a content audit later on, so I won't say too much on it, but we basically binned off all of his content and rewrote. We started rewriting it one by one to go into a lot more depth and a lot better. So what you see there is a massive shoot in the last month or two, and that's literally just from 3 blogs. There's no other blogs on that site apart from 3. And before, you can see it was just static. So tip 1, write content, sure, but write fewer pieces of high quality content. If it takes you 2 weeks to write 1, it's better than a week to write 3 poorly written ones. Tip 2, so each tip is going to follow on from the last one. Make sure that the content counts. So I've recently spoken to another client who's in the architecture space, and he said to me, look, I'm ranking for content and I'm getting a lot of traffic for it. And there's 3 examples there. So this is not an architect space. This is like a flatmate, like renting apartment type website. And he says, I'm ranking really well. I'm getting a lot of traffic, but none of it's converting. So I had a look at his content, and so what this business does is it rents out apartments. It's there if you want to find an apartment to let or rent up with a room buddy. And if you look at the content that they're ranking for, it's either too late in their user journey funnel, or it's not relevant at all. So in an example here, the ultimate cleaning rota template, where they rank number 1, and they get quite a bit of traffic for it. The logic would have it, if you are looking up cleaning rotas and you're sharing an apartment, you've already got an apartment with a load of friends already, so you're not looking for an apartment at that time. Similarly, it says best places to buy your green plants in London. Again, it ranks really well, and people who've just moved into an apartment are probably looking for plants, but that's just it. They've already moved into their apartment, so you're getting them at the wrong stage of the journey. So if you are writing content and you are driving good traffic, just make sure that the content aligns with people that's ultimately going to convert, because otherwise you're getting a load of vanity traffic, but it's not actually going to make you any money. Tip 3, if you're stuck for content ideas, see which content is working for your competitors and gain inspiration from it. So again, it's quite an obvious point, but I think I've got a quite unique methodology for doing this. And if I quickly run through it on this slide and the next one, it'll make sense. So plug a competitor into something like Ahrefs or any other SEO tool. I'm sure Authoritas has the same capabilities. And what you do, so in this example here, is I look at the top pages for what that content's ranking for, and I just export all of the keywords and all of the URLs for it. And I put this into a big spreadsheet, and I think if you go to the next slide. Yeah, so I put this into a big spreadsheet, so put that to the side of your mind for a second, and then I find other domains that also write about similar content. So a note here is your SERP competitors are not always the same as your commercial competitors. So what I mean by this is you might have an architecture firm or a clothing company, and you might tell me that these are your 5 competitors, whereas the actual people ranking for content similar to you might not actually sell clothing. An example is I was doing work for a company that rents out private office space, and the sort of content they were ranking for, they wanted to rank for because they wanted to appeal to entrepreneurs. So the sort of content they wanted to rank for was actually more aligned to what entrepreneur.com was writing about rather than what their competitors were writing about. So don't just go with what your competitors are writing about. Also plug into competing domains that are what I call SERP competitors rather than just commercial competitors, and then do the same process as I showed on the last slide. Just go through and export all the keywords that all their top articles rank for. And then if you go to the next slide, it leads me to my final tip. So I create a pivot table like this. So where I want to go with this is your time is valuable. So make decisions on what content to write based on data. So don't just go with one that you feel would be a good fit for your business. So if you roll all those points up, first of all, make the content, write fewer pieces of content, then write content which you know is more closely aligned to what's going to convert. Don't get vanity traffic, get ones that are more likely to buy. The third one is start plugging them into an SEO tool to find all their top pages, and then roll that all up into some sort of pivot table like this. And what you've got here is a list of URLs down in column A, and you can expand each one and see all the keywords they rank for. And in column, you can't quite see, but in column C, it gets a priority order. So what I'm looking at is the content with the fewest words, which gets the most traffic, which has the fewest backlinks. So they're my quick wins. So then what I'm going after now is content which is going to be easier to outrank, that's relevant, and it's all based on data. I can probably do a separate thing on this to show how the methodology works, but that would be my final tip on the content there.
Hello. Okay, let's go on to the first slide. Okay, this is one of the first things that I'm sure you're told for starting any website. It's important to have a solid foundation. This list is quite popular, but set speed, mobile friendliness are one of the key points that you need to have. Backlinks are basically an endorsement from other websites, relevant websites towards yours. We'll talk about this in the next few slides, and that you should have an authoritative, solid backlink profile. What I found very interesting in the last few years is that internal link redirects and the redirects chains are one aspect that is not very well considered, and but at the same time it can decrease your chance to rank for your current website, your current content. So you need to check it. On page optimization, every page should be optimized to rank for the relevant topic, the topic you want to rank for, keywords, and so on. And technical SEO. Technical SEO is includes most of this list, but is the starting point for any SEO project if you want to rank properly for any competitive keyword. Next slide, please. Okay, the second step is to perform a content audit. You should define what's relevant for your website, your business. As Andy said, you can rank for many keywords, but and get plenty of traffic. But if you don't rank for the relevant keywords, the topics that you make business with, is pointless having the traffic. You can delete what is not necessary. I worked a few months ago. I worked on this website who had almost 5 million pages. We removed 99% of them, and the traffic and sales increased very well. 100% more sales after the deletions. And of course, improve what supports your business goals. Improve your content. Improve properly with analyzing what's currently ranking and keyword content gap and so on. Next slide, please. Then you should run a business research for keywords. What does it mean? As I said earlier, you should rank for the business-related keywords. You should analyze which keywords are bring business on your website. This you can identify to approach in a different way your keyword research. You can identify who your best customers are because what you want is to get more of them. You want more of interesting clients, more of the clients that want to pay you. You should find why they bought from you. What's the reason why your solution, your product, your service is the best service for them? Because they paid you. They used their card to pay you. And spot your competitors. These are not the competitors that you consider competitors, but the competitors that your customers are considered competitors. This means that these are the alternatives that your best customers would work with in the future. Next slide, please. Thanks. Then you should approach the keyword and problem research. You should find the unique elements that you have towards compared to your competitors based on your research with your customers. Identify which are the specific tasks they want to accomplish, what they want from your products, what they really want, what's the problem they want to solve. Then spot who cares. This means that this is your new audience. Your audience, you can broaden your audience with a specific users, specific potential customers, and research their pain points. You can use different tools. You can look for forums. You can do Q&A websites, your authorities, Ahrefs, SEMrush to analyze your competitors' websites and so on. This would help you to find what their questions are and how to provide them with solutions, so that they know you can. They know that you can solve their problems, and you would be able also to improve your CTAs, your content for a relevant audience. And next slide, please. Finally, you can compete on different SERPs. You should, and with this process, you can narrow down your content for specific kind of audiences based on your best features, best customers. You can also find new angles. This means that you narrow down your audience, but you also increase the number of audience you can get. That can help you to get a lower, sometimes less competitive keywords, but more with a conversion rate that could be increased. Finally, with this process, you can also finding new angles. You can expand your link building prospecting by focusing on different kind of audiences that you didn't think in the past. So you don't go after what your direct competitor but you go after what your customer, what your main audience, paying audience go. And that's it from my side.
Awesome. Thanks, Francisco. All right, let's go to slide 1. So as these guys have already talked about, a lot of the stuff that we talk about, I feel like is kind of like basic SEO, but I think it's important to reiterate some of these things. Make sure you optimize your current content, your backlink profile. Conduct regular backlink audits, right? Make sure that you're, like mine as an example, there's tons of spammy links that people either add to my site or somehow they get added. And so we take a look at our backlink audit to make sure that there's nothing that's dragging your site down, and then remove those toxic backlinks. We do a manual check of those. We have software obviously that can do that, but we do a manual check as well because we want to be able to take a look at it, make sure we're not disavowing any great backlinks. Also fix broken backlinks. There's softwares that you can use to go and take a look at if there's any broken backlinks. It's also a great way to get links on other people's websites. If they have broken backlinks, you can find out where the broken backlinks are at, and then you can ask for a blog article that you have to replace that. And then identify link building opportunities as well. There's a lot of different ways to do that. A lot of great stuff on YouTube that you can check out on how to find other link opportunities, and we'll talk about that a little bit right now. So building new backlinks, guest posts on high authoritative websites. There's really no secret there. I write for about 115, maybe 110, 115 different websites. Inc., Forbes, Huffington Post. That's where I get a lot of my great backlinks, write a lot of great articles. Once can give people information and they feel like, hey, I'm a thought leader. That's probably what got me on Tea Time today. So it's obviously working. You can write for great authoritative websites and then create content pieces like great case studies. which naturally will get backlinks. So if you create, there's different hacks you can do. It can either be like a calculator, or it can be a great study that you've done. Those kind of pieces, usually people naturally want to backlink to them because they're great information and it naturally attracts people. And then also distributing infographics or gifographics on websites where you write, if you guys don't know what a gifographic is or a infographic, it's where you have information from a blog post you can make into a graphic, and you can, as long as it's not salesy, you can actually you can actually put it on other websites and people will actually backlink to it. And that's a good way to build backlinks, as long as it's not salesy type stuff. All right, next slide. So tip number 2, optimize for keywords. Conduct thorough keyword research, right? That's, once again, that's really where you want to spend your time. Check keyword volume or search volume, and then also keyword difficulty, the KDS, to see, once again, where's the low-hanging fruit. And so that can be a lot of long-tail keywords. Instead of looking up, DUI Sacramento, DUI attorney in Sacramento, something where there's a little more long tail. Once again, lower search volume, but going to be easy to rank for. And then target keywords that are realistic for ranking for. As Andy talked about earlier, I mean, you can rank for all kinds of great keywords, but if they're not high intent keywords, they're not something that's going to bring the right type of traffic, who cares, right? So you want to take a look at that, and then build future lists for, or build keyword lists for future, to be able to say, hey, this is some keywords. I usually have a doc that I have, and I'll put these different keyword ideas that I have for my website or my clients' websites, and then I go and do a deep dive into some software and kind of figure out where's the low hanging fruit, where can we get some quick wins. So keyword optimization. So don't do keyword stuffing. Hopefully you're not doing that. That's an old tactic that is no longer working. Google will penalize you for it. You have a certain keyword density that you can have for your blog post. Take a look at that. Make sure any of the softwares, if you put it in there, you can see a lot of free software that you can use and go and see what the keyword density is. And then maintain a decent keyword density, once again, of 1 to 2%. Some of the web pages can have a slightly higher. They can be around 3 or 4%. But once again, make sure you're not stuffing keywords and make sure that it reads correctly. There's always that delicate balance between SEO and a blog post, and making sure that, once again, that it reads right. And then choose a keyword for each page. And I think this is where a lot of companies don't understand is, every page that you have on Google is a piece of real estate, and you should optimize for keywords for every page. And so, a lot of times your home page is going to be your most powerful page. Pick the keyword that is a very high intent keyword that you want to be number 1 for. Make sure you're optimizing for that, and make sure each piece of content, once again, has a keyword in mind. You want to make sure you're creating content with intent. You're not just creating content to put out there. And then also include secondary keywords with your primary. That's kind of keyword clustering, where you can put out a blog post for one certain keyword, and then you start pulling in for other keywords, and you can start driving potentially thousands of people in traffic because of that. All right, next slide. So bonus tips, don't worry about Google's algorithm changes, right? And so, people are always worried about that. If you're putting out great content and you're on the up and up with stuff, if you're doing stuff in the gray area or in black hat, then obviously the algorithm changes can scare you. But if you're putting out quality content and reviewing your SERP and finding out what your competition is doing, with software these days, you can really find out what just about any technique anybody's doing, where they're at, how many backlinks they have, where they've been included, where you need to be included. There's a lot of great software that, once again, that information is all out there. It just takes a little digging, and do understand the key ranking factors, right? Understand why, when you're putting out a piece of content, what are the things that Google looks at? We talk about EAT, and there's some other things, some other acronyms that you can talk about in regards to what do we look at will get you higher up in the rankings, and then focus on creating targeted, high quality content. Once again, very basic idea, but the idea is a lot of people put these nice short 500-word blog posts. Google's obviously going to send favoritism to the ones that are well written, that are longer, that have great information, once again, that people are going to want to backlink to. And then doing this over a period of time increases your domain authority. I also like the fact of, once again, of deleting content that just doesn't make sense to have on your site anymore. I think that's an excellent tip. And then connecting webmaster tools or Google Console and Google Analytics to your website. They'll obviously tell you, hey, this is going on. You're having a problem with AMP, which is mobile, or whatever you're having issues with. I think it's important to connect that as well. And then track and improve upon keyword metrics, key metrics with your SEO strategy. So that's what I'm talking about. When we talk about intent, putting out a piece of content, what is your intent of that content? Like, is it to educate? Is it to make money? What is the intent when you're creating that content? And then you want to be able to compare that content to obviously your competitor's content and see why is it better, or why is yours not as good or better, and reason why you're ranking in that certain position. And then you structure data and conduct regular site audits. I think that's important. A lot of people don't realize that, hey, listen, you can start getting some bad backlinks, or you can get some stuff. Do a site audit and do an evaluation of your site just to make sure that you're in compliance and things are going good there and there's nothing that's dragging you down.
Great. Thank you very much to all our speakers for such insightful tips. I'll pass over to Carrie now for the questions.
Great, thank you. So the first question we have is for Francesco. Did you completely delete the content or did you redirect it to another part of the site? And what type of content did you decide to delete?
Okay, the first thing is this kind of content was basically the list was a huge amount of name products that belonging to the space of my client. So they wanted to rank for each model and each product, each SKU basically of their space. This was not possible, and this part of the website didn't get any traffic, just very little traffic. What they did was basically deleting them and making sure that Google would not recognize that this was deleted page. In this specific case, we didn't redirect any, just a few pages to the other content, but given that were technical information, they were not relevant to other content, because the rest of the content, it was basically a blog post and a sales page.
Great, thank you. The next question we have is for Shane. What is the best way to find authoritative link building opportunities?
So the way that I did it is I started writing for websites. As I touched on, I write for whatever, about 110, 115 websites. What I did is I just started with, obviously when I started my blog, the domain authority was real low. And so I would just write for sites that were comparable. And then I would just kind of went up in the rankings and write for this site. And then I would say, hey, I write for this site. Can I write for your site? It's an old technique, but I started doing it a number of years ago. A lot of the sites I write for now, you can't even write for. But the idea is that you can find those sites and you can say, I'm going to provide great content. What I would do is write great content on your site to be able to show that as an example. Hey, my blog posts are whatever, 1,500, 2,000, 5,000 words, and I want to create a great piece of content for your website. It can be this, and this is the kind of people it can drive in. So, you just want to be very specific in what your intent is on why you want to write the content, and reevaluate and let them know that, hey, you write great content, and that's the reason why they should include you on the blog.
That's really helpful. Thank you. And so the next question we have is for Andy. How do you persuade clients to write less content? For example, having been told by your CEO to write 15 pieces of content, how would you persuade them that maybe is too much or not right?
You're on mute, Andy.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a case of managing your stakeholders. It's not as black and white as that. If you've got capacity to write 15 bits of content, write 15 bits of content. It's more, and you'll know that if you're in-house, then you'll know this. You'll know what your internal capacity is like. You'll know how long it takes to write a good piece of content. If they ask for 15 bits of content by the weekend, you just push back on it and you say, look, I need to open up an honest channel here. We're not going to manage this. If, of course, you're like someone like G2.com, headed up by Kevin Indig, where you've got 50 in-house writers, 15 bits of content by the weekend, you should do 15 by the end of the day. Do you know what I mean? You've got to manage the expectations. That's if you're in-house. If you work for an agency, then it's just pushing back to the client. It's saying, look, this is what you pay us, and we can't realistically push that much out by this point, but we can get this amount. And then it's selling back into them why you'd rather spend time doing that high quality content, even if it's a case of a recent example I just given someone is I gave him a quote to write another 4 bits of content, and he came back saying that's a little bit steep. And I said, well, if you look at the 50 bits of content already on your site, I guarantee that costs a lot more than the 4 bits I'm going to write, but the 4 bits I'm going to write actually will move the needle a bit. And it's a case of managing that expectation and pushing back a little bit and being honest. So it's, to answer your question simply, is knowing your capacity, either in-house or an agency, and pushing back or or selling what good content can do, if that helps.
Great, thank you. And how can you tell the client that it's not good to write 15 pieces of content a week then?
How can you tell them?
Yeah, so just on this one, actually, it was the fact that I know you're saying about maybe the agency doing it, but you know, if you're actually working with a client and they want to do, and they're already writing 15 pieces a week, and they don't have the budget for you to write it, but you're recommending that they write less, like you said, and actually do quality rather than quantity. How do you persuade clients to stop doing the old-fashioned content creation, just churning it out?
So the conversation will have come up having done an analysis and shown, look, you've got 100 blogs in your site and only 1 or 2 of them are actually working for you. So it's very clear from what you're doing, it's not working. Let's try it this way, is how you go down that route, I guess. Yeah, you wouldn't just recommend, because you wouldn't just go in on day one and if they say we're writing 15 blogs a day, you know, it might be working. Particularly in quite a lot of non-English speaking countries where Googlebot's not very advanced, I'll tell you what, it still does work to churn out poor content. I've been speaking to a lot of people. So a guy I speak to in Finland, and he says, yeah, we can still just churn out rubbish and it will rank well. In which case, you know, I still wouldn't recommend it, but it is working. So you can't go down the same line. But that recommendation wouldn't have come about unless you'd looked at how much content they've got on their site and something isn't working. And if it's not working, then they've got to be open to listening to that constructive criticism. Look, what you're doing at the moment isn't working. Let's try it a different way. So I guess that's how I'd approach it.
I'm going to touch on that too. You know, that really comes down to that you're the authoritative figure, right? There's a reason they reached out. If what they were doing was working, they wouldn't have reached out, right? If they have a great plan and everything's going awesome, then they have no reason for you to come in and be able to help them. So really what it comes down to is you have to remember that you are the professional. You're the person that has been doing this for a long time. They're the client. And so you need to make sure you have that line of letting them understand, like, listen, there's a reason why you're reaching out to me. Doing 15 pieces of content obviously historically hasn't worked. As Andy touched on, hey, you have 100 pieces of content, only 2 are ranking. What happens if we put out better quality and we had these next 4 out of 10 or whatever, that these started ranking better, and kind of educate them on the process? Because once again, why go hire somebody for you to do the same old thing? That doesn't really make sense. So if that client, for me, if that client gives me major pushback and wants to do the old tactics and it's not going to work, then they're not going to be a good client for me.
Yeah.
I just want to say something about this. The client I was talking about earlier about when I delete the content, they were planning to implement a few more million pages, a few million products. What I did was basically showing them that most of the content that they had in this area was not producing any traffic and any sales. This was enough in my case to persuade them to delete them and improve the other content that they had.
That's really useful. Thank you, guys. We have a question from Lawrence. Any tips for winning in situations where you have well-optimized landing pages for significant head terms? For example, credit cards, where you're going head-to-head against other well-optimized pages. This is for anyone.
I mean, I'll kick off and then I guess people can feed in. I'm presuming then you're saying, like, as an example, a startup company offering credit cards as an example, a new product, and they're up against MasterCard and all these things and they're going to win. So assuming that is the question, this is where we go back to Shane's point of going for longer terms and trying to capture the same traffic in a different way. Look, you're not going to rank for credit cards unless you put some serious amount of effort into your link building, which is just not a cost-effective way of doing it. It's not scalable, especially for a startup company. Getting decent links is the hardest thing you can possibly do. So getting content there that approaches them somewhere else in their user journey. So in that example, you'd want to start thinking, okay, what's my user looking for a credit card for? And then you want to start being where they are looking at every point in the journey. So if you know that the people looking for a credit card is normally because they've got bad, this is a bad example because this is probably also really competitive, but you'll get my point. If you know people are looking for credit cards because they've got bad credit, or because let's use the current pandemic as an example, you know that people are going to be struggling for money because perhaps people aren't getting paid. You start genuinely making useful content about how you can get a credit card for bad credit because of COVID, making this content that is highly relevant, especially now, highly helpful, and then you basically start pulling them into your journey. So you don't need to rank for credit cards, you need to rank for the content around credit cards that is leading them to eventually getting that credit card. So yeah, you'll speak about all the problems. So how I do it is some sort of workflow, right? Why is someone having a credit card? And then start working back from that, and then writing content that solves all that problem. So every time someone Googles or searches credit card, other than the head term credit card, I'm there at every point of the journey so that I am more likely to get them on a credit card further down the line.
Yeah, I think it's a great point what Andy said. I mean, it really comes down to you're probably not going to outrank MasterCard and Visa and Discover, right? They have millions of dollars and they probably got hundreds of thousands of backlinks. So you have to be creative on, and I think that was a great current example of COVID. Like, how can you get accepted, or how can you be accepted, or how can you fill out an application to get accepted for, during COVID, right? Because that could be a very valid question that you can find in regards to somebody's doing that search. You can look at Google Trends. There's a lot of different tools you can look at to see what the trends are with credit cards, with anything. Credit cards is a pretty difficult space, but once again, you can find look at the Google Trends and say, hey, this is somebody's asking these types of questions in regards to credit card. And as Andy touched on, you got to figure out what your audience is looking for, right? Like, what are the questions that they would be asking, and how can you create content that is going to be the answer to those questions? And sometimes you have to get a little frisky, but unless you got millions of dollars and plenty of time and a huge budget. Going after creditcard.com is going to be, or going after just the word credit card is going to be, it's going to be a big task.
I've just read Lawrence's follow-up. Actually, he meant if you were ranking number 2 and you wanted to push into number 1. So I guess in which case, Lawrence, if you could look at, there's hundreds of possible things you'd be looking into. So you'd start looking into, is it because you've got a dedicated landing page? If not, let's create one, pushing into position 1. Is it because purely the competitor might have more links? If so, we need more links. It might be you've got the same links, you've got the same content, in which case let's improve our internal linking strategy. It might be that their site is slightly, when you're talking about position 1 and 2 of big brands with a term like that, there's no single answer. There's so many things you've got to dig into to try and get that edge.
But if you're number 2 for credit cards, congratulations. That's not a bad place to be. Last time I checked. So
great, thank you. And so just to finish up, Nadia's asking, Andy, can you please confirm how you found new content ideas based on your competitors?
So, I mean, if you watch the presentation back and pause it, you can almost see the process in the presentation, but I'm happy to do a follow-up write-up about it. So, yeah, plug it into, I tend to plug, I find that often a domain makes it really easy to find their blog content because they stick it under a subdirectory of dash blog or dash articles or dash editorials. So you put that subfolder into an SEO tool. I use Ahrefs because I'm familiar with it. And then you simply find the equivalent of their top pages report. And then you start to look at which content is driving them the most organic traffic. It's as simple as that, really. And what I like to do is just I often download 60 to 70 pieces, and then I use a simple Python script to pull it all into one. And then I pull in all the data with them as well. So I'm not only just looking for content ideas, I then prioritize that content based on which is going to be the easiest to outrank the soonest. So it really is as simple as find the blog directory of a website and keep plugging them in and pulling all the keywords from it. Making sure, as I think all 3 of us have mentioned, making sure that content is actually aligned with the intent and high conversion. Like I said, if I just went off of the content one of my competitors had written about on the flat sharing space, I don't want to be writing content about the best plants to find in London because it's not going to convert. So I'd cast that one away. But yeah, it really is as simple as that.
I could touch on that too. I also use BuzzSumo. There's a lot of different tools. BuzzSumo, you can do that too, is where you put in a keyword and you can see which articles are ranking the highest and then how much social shares they have. And then from there, you can actually pull that list and once can start digging deeper into seeing, how many backlinks, how long the content is. You can look into the other things to figure out what you need to do to produce a piece of content that's better, that can get more social shares and whatever that is. So there's a lot of tools out there that you can evaluate content. So something you should absolutely do. Once again, you got to create content with intent. You have to make sure there's a reason for doing it and digging deep and getting that research.
Can I just add to Shane's point as well? Because this is another mistake, not mistake, but something I see people spending ages on trying to get, and it doesn't happen, rarely happens. Content either gets links or ranks organically. It rarely does both. And if you try and get the both, you'll spend ages trying to get one. So I'd optimize for one. An example is, let's say, who's recently done one? There's an insurance company, a house insurance company, and they did a big piece on getting, they basically mapped out an interactive map of what some computer game would look like if you were to rent a house in it. Got hundreds of thousands of links, but it'll never rank for anything. On the other hand, you write a really handy guide on, say you sell fire exit doors, you write a really handy guide on fire exit doors and how many you need for your business and all the fire regulations. It's really unlikely to get links because it's boring, but it will rank organically and bring people into your funnel. There is content that does both, but if you're trying to do that has both, my advice would be try and choose one or the other.
Great, thank you. Well, that's everything we have time for. Thank you all for sharing your tips. Back over to Joe.
Yeah, thank you very much. And that was very, we went quite in depth with some of the questions. So appreciate that you going into detail around the answers, especially that last point. So a big thank you to Andy, Francesco, and Shane for joining us on Tea Time SEO today. We will be back on Monday. We will be talking about technical audit. So these key issues that you need to highlight for e-commerce sites. And we'll be joined by Arija, Christina, and Luke. So that's Monday at 4 p.m. So book that in your calendars, and we will look forward to seeing you on Monday. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today on Tea Time SEO.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys.